Aloha divers, I'm Byron.
I'm Connor.
And today we're going to talk about 5 ways to dominate in spearfishing.
First way, and probably the most important, is your gear. Not going to be out there shooting much fish without the right gear. First and foremost, you're going to have to see the fish, and with that comes a mask that fits. You have to fit the mask well. It's got to seal, it's got to be comfortable. We're free diving, so it's best to be low volume. Yeah, but you definitely need a mask that fits in order to get in the water and actually shoot fish. Another thing that you may need is a snorkel, and one of the favorites is the Simple J. It's a really easy to use snorkel. It's very simple, nothing's going to go wrong on it. I use a little bit of a different snorkel, but as long as it is working and you can breathe air out of the top of it, it should be pretty good for free diving. And let's see, other than the comfy snorkel, one of the things that you're going to need, because you're not going to get too far without it, is going to be a good set of fins. Now the best money I've ever spent in free diving or spearfishing has been on 2 things. One is a class, the other one is a good pair of fins. Don't have to be carbon. I would suggest a long fin though. You need that to be able to conserve oxygen, let your fin do the work for you. So yeah, definitely need a good pair of fins. I suggest put the money towards a decent pair of fins. That's one of the things you're going to definitely need. Outside of that, it depends on where you're diving. We dive here in Hawaii. I'm kind of a weakling when it comes to it. Some people don't use it. Yeah, I'm kind of a sissy when it comes to diving. I have to use a wetsuit. I have to use a 3mm 2-piece open cell. That's what I'm using. And that's what we have here. I think there's a 3.5. Need a loading pad if you're using a gun. So as far as gear that really matters, a wetsuit does, because if you get cold, you're not going to end up being able to dive very well. You're going to get shivery. You're not going to be able to hold your breath as long. The fish are going to think you're goofy looking when you're moving around like that. So the next thing is you're going to need some gloves. Now I really like these gloves. Those ones look to be a little bit too small for Byron there. So get ones that fit. That's important. He may need a bigger size than that. These ones are JBL's gloves. They're a Dyneema glove, and the reason I like Dyneema is because it's really cut resistant. So some of the fish that we shoot here have spines. They have blades like the surgeon fish, and blades will cut right through normal gloves. With a good pair of Kevlars or a good pair of Dyneema, it's not going to happen. So gloves are a great thing to have as well. Going to be able to stay in the water a lot longer if your hands aren't all cut up. Probably one of the most important things as well is going to be a float setup. Now here in Hawaii, it's legal to have a 12x12 flag. This won't cut it. They probably won't give you a ticket, but I wouldn't want to end up risking it. So you need a float with a 12x12 flag.
Plus a bigger flag is just more visible to boaters in the world.
Very much so.
The Coast Guard.
Yeah, so it's good to have a 12x12 flag or bigger. The other thing with a float, that's where you're going to put your fish. If something toothy comes along, whether it's an eel coming off the bottom or a shark coming from the blue, you're going to want to be a little bit away from your fish if they decide they want to take it from you. So a float's a really good thing to have. From that float, you're going to hang a cuy, which this one here's the JBL cuy. That's their competition cuy, swivel. It's got cable on it. But yeah, so that's where you're going to hang your fish. Some people use it on their belt. I never recommend that because of this aforementioned shark and eel problem. So I hang it from the float, and a good cuy is always something good to have. Outside of a cuy, I think a dive knife would probably be the second most important outside of a float with a flag, and that is because, one, if you get caught in shooting line, in line, rope, fishing line on the bottom, you need something to quickly and cleanly cut your way out of it. That's where the knife comes in. Hopefully you only use the knife 99.9% of the time, braining fish. So what brings in those toothy creatures isn't necessarily blood, it's movement. So when the fish is over there kicking like this on your float, the shark feels it, it's going to come in and want to take them. Plus it's just humane. You want to put the fish out of its misery as fast as you possibly can. Last, but certainly not least, you need a weapon of some sort. You're not going to go out there and poke fish with dirty looks. So you can have 2 things. One is a pull spear, the other is a gun. I've got a few right here. This right here is a Bouchat, or no, this is actually a Cressy. This one's the Cressy Cherokee. This one is a 90. So it's pretty good size for the reef around here. You're gonna base your weapon on what kind of diving you're doing. The shorter the gun, the shorter the range. So I would use those in low visibility or dumb fishy areas, areas where the fish are dumber than normal. A longer gun, more range, smarter fish. So moose, for example, probably want a longer gun.
Or bigger fish.
Or bigger fish, yeah. You need more power, more weight behind the shaft. You want to land bigger fish. So blue water, you're going to use a little bit bigger gun than this. But this is probably the most important thing to have altogether, because you're not going to poke fish with ill intent.
So one of the 5 ways to dominate spearfishing is going to be your knowledge and understanding of freediving. Now, the reason why freediving is so important when you're spearfishing, especially here in Hawaii, is because it is actually illegal to spearfish on scuba or with an air-assisted device. So this is really important, because if you want to be able to hang out down there with the fish to get your fish, you're going to need to be good at holding your breath and getting down there. So what we recommend is you take a freediving course, beginning with the level 1 freediving course, then you can move on to spearfishing or level 2. But what you're going to learn in the level 1 course, first and foremost, is going to be safety. The number 1 most important thing is how to safety your buddy and how to handle emergency situations. Because nobody wants to get into a bad situation when you're just out there trying to have fun, maybe hopefully catch some dinner while you're at it. Secondly, you're going to become a more confident spear fisherman or spearo, because the course is going to really teach you how to use your gear properly, how to use the correct techniques, and when you do get uncomfortable underwater, it's going to teach you how to deal with emergency scenarios. Lastly, what we're going to learn from our freediving course is going to give us increased skill when we're spearfishing, because once we have our techniques dialed in and we're really comfortable in the water with good habits and techniques, now we can really focus and hone in on actually hunting the fish, staying down there, and using our spear gun the most effective way, instead of having to focus on all the other aspects leading up to that.
So the third thing that's going to make you an effective and efficient spear fisherman is going to be understanding your prey, knowing what you're going after, where it's found, what species you want to shoot, what species you don't want to shoot. There's some out there that might poison you. There's some out there that taste super good. So one of the ways, and the easiest way I find, is just getting a simple book. This one by John Hoover, Hawaiian Reef Fishes. I've studied this book dozens and dozens of times, from front cover to back cover. It doesn't tell you what's good to eat, but it definitely teaches you which is which, and all these pictures are from Hawaii. So it's really good. This helped me out immensely when it came to learning what fish to go for. Another way to do that is your dive partners. Go with somebody that knows what they're going for. You can also check YouTube, and you look up Hawaii spearfishing. You can see what fish they're shooting and which ones look like they're desirable. After that, you can eat them. What you like, great. What you don't like, don't eat. The other thing with identification is going to be habitat. So you're not going to go on the reef if you're looking for mahi-mahi. You're not going to go looking in a cave or a hole. You're going to want to go out to the blue water. So understanding habitat for different species is very important as well. So you want to know what depth the species you're going for is at. Pelagics are going to be a lot deeper. Reef fish are going to be, of course, in on the reef. Substrate, if it's going to be a rocky bottom or if you want a sandy bottom, different fish hang out in different spots. So you got to know that stuff really well. Also structure, if you're going for a fish like mempachi or a lua, a lot of times you can find those during the day. They're going to be hanging out underneath archways, inside cracks and holes. So every now and then you can see them out running around, but you're going to increase your chances of landing one if you know where to look, what structure to look for. Another thing to look for is their behavior. Now, behavior is more important than I think a lot of people give it credit for. If you know how the fish is going to act, you have a better idea of how you can get it. Uhus, is a good example, is a parrotfish. You can't chase them down, you can't chum, they're not going to come into any of that stuff. So you got to know how they act, and if you know how they act, you get a better shot at them. The other thing is behavior is herbivore or predator. Are they going to end up eating limu, or are they going to end up eating fish? So if they're a predator, you can bring them in certain ways, like you can actually chum for them or rebait them in. The other way is if they're eating, if they're an herbivore and they eat limu, you can't really bait them in with limu. So you're going to end up having to lay there. It's called a spetto. It's where you just wait. That's basically what it means. Just wait for the fish to come to you. And that brings me back to the probably one of the most important things to never do when you're hunting fish. Don't chase them. As soon as you chase that fish, they're going to act like prey, and you're going to have a really, really rough day out in the water. So if at all possible, try to wait for those fish to come to you. Never chase.
Ryan Myers has spent years perfecting the craft of spearfishing. His YouTube channel features many adventures and tips highlighting spearfishing in Hawaii. Check out his channel using the link below. He's joined us today to speak about something he has a lot of: water time. Water time, really, there's no substitute for water time, right, Ryan?
For sure, there's probably nothing better that you can do for your diving, but go diving.
How much time do you think you've spent in the water if you just kind of had to tabulate all the time?
Gosh, a lot. I don't know, 3 days, 3 to 5 days a week for probably 10 years. A lot of time in the water.
And so how long do you typically spend, like when you go out on a session to shoot a video or just for fun, is there like a certain amount of time you spend, and is there a right or a wrong amount of time to be in the water?
Well, there's definitely no right or wrong time to be in the water. I mean, as long as you're out there and you're comfortable and you're warm, I like to spend as long as possible. That's usually what it is. You know, an average session is probably 4 to 6 hours, but can definitely be longer if you're on a boat and you're staying out there and you're moving spots, and can definitely be shorter if you just jump in and the conditions aren't great and you get back out.
So that goes back to having the right gear, keeping warm,
Guaranteed.
Being comfortable, staying hydrated, that sort of stuff.
The better you feel in the water, the longer you can stay in there.
How can you tell the difference between somebody that has a lot of water time versus somebody that's, maybe does not, but is a really comfortable swimmer or free diver?
Well, I think those comfortable swimmers and freedivers really can turn into a really good spearfisherman because they've kind of started out that journey already. They kind of are already comfortable in the water. But definitely when you show up and you get in the water, you can tell immediately from someone whether they've put the time in and the practice in, and their gear is dialed and they're sorted and they're just comfortable in the water. And then it doesn't matter where you are, you can go and find the fish or learn the techniques from there.
How valuable is water time to improving your spearfishing? Like how versus maybe doing something else? Like,
I think spending time in the water is probably the #1 way to improve your spearfishing. I mean, there's a lot of different facets of spearfishing and ways to get better, but they all happen in the water. While you're out there practicing, trial and error, you're learning, you're spending time with other people that are also good and learning from them, and time in the water is invaluable.
Okay. And then what do you think is more important? I know this is kind of redundant, but the gear you use or the time you spend in the water?
I think definitely time in the water. There doesn't matter what you really have on your body as long as you're comfortable. It doesn't have to be the nicest stuff in the world. As long as it fits you, it feels good, and it allows you to stay out there and be comfortable for as long as you need.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
Cool. Thank
See
you so
out
much.
in the water someday. Another one of the 5 ways to dominate spearfishing is to have a good mentor or even a peer, somebody that you can spearfish that maybe you look up to or that you respect. Conor, you've been spearfishing a long time. Do you have anybody that comes straight to mind when you think about it?
First and foremost, it has to be my aunt Tanya Burney, my aunt Jennifer Halani. They were probably some of my biggest mentors, my kind of biggest role models when it comes to spearfishing. And without Tanya, I'd have never actually got into the sport. A good example of how they mentored me is I wanted, of course, to go straight to a spear gun when I got into spearfishing, and it was everybody wants to do that. They want to go straight to a gun to shoot bigger fish. I can't wait to land these big pelagic fish. What they did though is they made it. They would buy my first gun for me. But I had to shoot a list of fish with a 3-prong first. And what's so great about that is that it actually made me learn how to hunt fish. I hated it at the time. I didn't want to do that, spend all day long and not get anything. The more I did it, the more I learned how certain fish react. And so I was able to do it. They actually had a moo on that list at one point, and I called BS. They took it off for me, which I still would probably be using a 3-prong if they didn't. But anyway, so that's a really great way that they kind of forced me into learning the sport better. It made me a better diver. It made me a better stalker. I understood the fish. So I went to a gun. It was way, way better. So another thing that Jennifer Halani did, Auntie Jen, she's really cool. when she dives, she's very respectful of the environment. She respects the prey that she's going for. I always thought it was kind of cool because every fish that she shoots, like three-prong, she's a big three-pronger, she'd shoot the fish, and on the way up, she always likes to cover the eyes. And I think that's a way to try to calm them. And then, of course, she puts them out, puts them down as fast as she can once she gets to the top. I always thought that was really cool. I feel if you dive Pono like that, you're going to have better luck. Whether karma's real or not, who knows? Auntie Jen shoots some really nice fish, so I'll hedge my bets on maybe. But yeah, so, and then of course the fish behavior, kind of went over that. You learn how the fish react and stuff if you do that, and having a mentor like that is awesome. There's also, like when we talked about peers, two guys that come to mind right away are my buddy Mike Hong. He was an amazing diver. He was so much fun to be with. His brother Derek Hong, who I still get to go out with, luckily. Those guys were great. I have a ton of different stories about what we did with on our dive trips. We laughed more than we dove most of the time, and yet we still shot really good fish. And you got to have your buddies. You got to have peers to go out with. Otherwise, I mean, nobody's going to believe you. Some of the stories I've got, I'm glad Derek or Mikey were there, because I'll have somebody that'd be like, yeah, that fully happened. So yeah, somebody to share your experiences with. And then probably the most important part about having both mentors and peers, hopefully you have mentors that are peers. You can go with them and they can teach you. That's the best way to do it. But number one is safety. You got to have somebody with you. I've been in a couple situations where if I didn't have a dive partner, who knows? So and my dive partners were great. They knew, they took the classes. They knew safety. They were up, one down. So that's a huge part of diving. That's one of the ways that you can really maximize your potential and end up dominating the sport.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be covering way more spearfishing tips, tricks, and topics and gear reviews. So hit that subscribe button to get the latest info from us and updates. And if you want to learn more in-depth spearfishing tips, swing by the shop and we would be super happy to talk story with you about your fishing experiences and how to up your game in spearfishing. See you in the next video.
Ahui ho.